The cold December air wrapped around everything like a gentle embrace, carrying with it the scent of pine needles and with smoke that drifted to the quiet neighborhood. Sarah stood at her kitchen window, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, watching the first hints of dawn paint the sky in shades of deep purple and soft pink. The warmth of the ceramic cup seeped into her palms, a small comfort against the chill that seemed to have settled not just in the air, but somewhere deep inside her chest. It was Christmas morning, and the house felt too quiet, too empty, despite the twinkling lights she had strung along the mantelpiece and the small tree standing in the corner of the living room. She had decorated it alone 3 weeks ago, hanging each ornament with careful deliberation, remembering the stories behind them. The little wooden angel her mother had given her, the glass snowflake from her first Christmas with David, the clay handprint, now 12 years old, that her son Michael had made in kindergarten, his tiny fingers preserved forever in that fragile red clay. Michael, the thought of him sent a familiar ache through her heart. He was overseas now, stationed somewhere she could barely pronounce, serving his country with the same determination and kindness that had always defined him. They had spoken on a video call 2 days ago, his face pixelated and distant on her laptop screen, the connection cutting in and out. He had smiled that brave smile of his, the one that never quite reached his eyes anymore, and told her he was fine, that he was safe, that he wished he could be home. She had smiled back, matching his bravery with her own, telling him she understood, that she was proud, that Christmas was just another day. But it was not just another day. It was the first Christmas in 28 years that she would spend completely alone. Sarah took a slow sip of her coffee, feeling the bitter warmth slide down her throat. Through the window, she could see the Hendersons' house across the street, their windows already glowing with warm yellow light. She imagined them in there, the whole family gathered around their tree, children squealing with delight over open presents, the smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. The thought made her smile, even as it deepened the hollow feeling in her chest. She turned away from the window and walked slowly into the living room, her slippers making soft shuffling sounds against the hardwood floor. The Christmas tree lights cast dancing shadows on the walls, red and green and gold, creating patterns that shifted and swayed with each tiny movement of air. Beneath the tree sat 3 carefully wrapped presents. One for Michael, which she would mail to him next week. One for her sister Linda, who lived in Seattle and would not be visiting this year. And one small box, wrapped in silver paper, that she had bought for herself, because it seemed too sad to have nothing at all under the tree with her name on it. The house creaked and settled around her, those familiar sounds of an old home that she had learned to interpret over the years. The gentle groan of the floorboards in the hallway, the soft tick of the radiator as it warmed up, the distant hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. These sounds had once been the background music to a full and noisy life, but now they seemed amplified, each one a reminder of the silence between them. Sarah set her coffee mug down on the side table and lowered herself onto the couch, pulling an old knitted blanket over her legs. It was the blanket her mother had made years and years ago, the yarn soft and worn from countless washings and countless nights of comfort. She ran her fingers over the familiar pattern, feeling each stitch, remembering her mother's hands working the needles with patient precision. Her mother had loved Christmas. She had filled their home with magic every year, baking cookies that filled every room with sweetness, singing carols in her clear, bright voice, insisting that they all wear matching pajamas on Christmas Eve. Even after Sarah had grown up and moved away, even after she had married David and started her own family, her mother had maintained those traditions, creating new ones with Michael, spoiling him with love and laughter and far too many presents. She had been gone for 5 years now, and David for 3, and Michael was half a world away. And Sarah sat alone in the quiet house, surrounded by memories that felt both precious and unbearably heavy. The sky outside grew lighter, the deep purples giving way to softer blues and pinks, the sun still hidden behind the houses, but promising its arrival. Sarah closed her eyes and let herself drift, not quite sleeping but not quite awake, suspended in that strange space between memory and present moment. She thought about the Christmas mornings of her childhood, waking up before dawn, shaking her younger brother awake, the two of them creeping down the stairs in their footy pajamas, trying so hard to be quiet, but failing spectacularly, their excited whispers and giggles echoing through the house until their parents emerged, bleary-eyed and smiling, to watch them tear into their presents. She thought about the Christmas mornings with David and Michael, when Michael was small and believed in magic, when he would wake them at 5 in the morning, bouncing on their bed, his eyes wide with wonder, asking if Santa had come, if he had eaten the cookies they left out, if the reindeer had eaten the carrots. David would groan and pull the pillow over his head, but he was always smiling, and they would all trudge downstairs together, a sleepy, happy little family, to see what miracles had appeared overnight. Those mornings had been filled with chaos and joy, wrapping paper flying everywhere, Michael's delighted shouts, David's terrible jokes, the smell of the cinnamon rolls Sarah always made, the way the morning light would stream through the windows and make everything glow. They had been perfect, those mornings. She had not known how perfect until they were gone. A sound broke through her reverie, a soft thump from somewhere outside, followed by the distant rumble of a car engine. Sarah opened her eyes, blinking in the growing light. The neighborhood was waking up. Soon there would be more sounds, more signs of life. Families beginning their celebrations. Children playing with new toys in their yards. The cheerful chaos of Christmas Day spreading through the streets. She should get up, she thought. She should make herself some breakfast, maybe those cinnamon rolls. Even if it was just for her, she should call Linda, wish her a Merry Christmas, chat about nothing important, maintain a connection. She should open her presents, the ones under the tree, even though she knew what was in each one. She should do something, anything, to make this day feel less empty. But she stayed on the couch, wrapped in her mother's blanket, watching the light change and listening to the house breathe around her. Another sound, closer this time. Footsteps on the front porch, quick and light. Sarah frowned, turning her head toward the front door. It was too early for visitors, and she was not expecting anyone. Probably a delivery, she thought, though that seemed unlikely on Christmas morning. Maybe one of the neighbors, bringing over cookies or a casserole, those small kindnesses that people offered when they knew you were alone. She pushed the blanket aside and stood up, her knees protesting slightly, a reminder that she was not as young as she used to be. She walked to the front door, her hand reaching for the knob, expecting to find a package on the porch, or perhaps no one at all, just her imagination playing tricks. She opened the door, and the cold morning air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of frost and pine, and something else, something familiar that she could not quite place. The porch was empty, no package, no person, just the gray painted boards and the welcome mat that said "Home Sweet Home" in cheerful red letters. Sarah stepped out onto the porch, her slippers inadequate against the cold, and looked around. The street was quiet. A few cars parked along the curbs, the Hendersons' house still glowing warmly across the way. Nothing seemed out of place, nothing to explain the footsteps she had heard. She was about to turn back inside, chalking it up to the house settling or her own wishful thinking, when she heard it. A voice, distant but unmistakable, calling her name. Mom. Sarah froze, her heart suddenly pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She knew that voice. She knew it better than her own. But it could not be real, could not be here, because that voice was supposed to be thousands of miles away, in a place she could not reach, in a world she could not touch. Mom. The voice called again, closer now, and Sarah turned, her eyes scanning the street, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps that created little clouds in the cold air. And then she saw him. Michael was walking up the sidewalk, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, wearing his uniform, his face tired but smiling, his eyes locked on hers. He was real, solid, here, walking toward her house, toward her, on Christmas morning when he was supposed to be half a world away. Sarah could not move, could not breathe, could not process what she was seeing. Her mind struggled to make sense of it, to reconcile the impossible with the undeniable reality of her son walking up her front path. Time seemed to slow down, each second stretching into eternity, and she was aware of everything with a strange, heightened clarity. The way his breath created clouds in the cold air, the sound of his boots on the concrete, the way the morning light caught the insignia on his uniform, the smile on his face, that real smile, the one that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. He reached the bottom of the porch steps and stopped, looking up at her, and for a moment they just stared at each other, mother and son, separated by 3 wooden steps and a distance that had felt insurmountable just moments ago. "Surprise," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Merry Christmas, Mom." Something broke inside Sarah, some dam that had been holding back months and months of worry and loneliness and fear, and suddenly she was moving, flying down the steps, her slippers forgotten, her arms reaching for him. Michael dropped his duffel bag and caught her, wrapping his arms around her and lifting her slightly off the ground, and Sarah buried her face in his shoulder and felt the tears come, hot and fast and unstoppable. He was here. He was real. He was home. She could feel the rough fabric of his uniform under her cheek, could smell the familiar scent of him mixed with airplane and travel and distance, could feel his heart beating strong and steady against her own. His arms were tight around her, holding her like he used to when he was small and afraid. Except now he was the one doing the comforting, the one providing the strength. "I thought," Sarah tried to say, but her voice would not work properly, the words coming out choked and broken. "I thought you could not. You said you could not." "I know," Michael said, his voice rough. "I know, Mom. I am sorry. I wanted to surprise you. I wanted to be here." He set her down gently, but kept his hands on her shoulders, steadying her, and Sarah looked up at him, really looked at him, taking in every detail. He was thinner than she remembered, his face more angular, his eyes holding shadows that had not been there before. But he was smiling, truly smiling, and he was here, and that was all that mattered. "How?" she managed to ask, wiping at her tears with shaking hands. "How did you? When did you?" "They approved my leave last week," Michael explained, his thumbs rubbing gentle circles on her shoulders. "I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid something would fall through, that I would not make it, and I did not want to disappoint you, so I kept it secret. I flew out 2 days ago, had a layover in Germany, another in New York, and then I drove from the airport. I have been driving all night. I got here about 20 minutes ago, but I sat in the car for a bit, trying to work up the courage to knock on the door." Sarah laughed, a sound somewhere between a sob and genuine joy. "You were afraid to knock on your own door?" Michael grinned, that boyish grin she remembered from his childhood. "I was afraid you would have a heart attack." "You are not exactly young anymore, Mom." Sarah swatted his arm, but she was laughing now, really laughing, and Michael was laughing too, and the sound of it filled the quiet morning air, chasing away the loneliness that had seemed so permanent just minutes ago. "Come inside," Sarah said, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the door. "Come inside. You must be freezing. You must be exhausted. Have you eaten? When did you last sleep? Oh my God, Michael, I cannot believe you are here." She was babbling, she knew, words tumbling out in a rush, but she could not stop, could not slow down, the joy and shock and relief all mixing together into something overwhelming and wonderful. Michael picked up his duffel bag and followed her into the house, and the moment they crossed the threshold, Sarah felt the space transform. The house was not empty anymore. The silence was not oppressive. The Christmas tree light seemed brighter. The air seemed warmer. Everything seemed more alive. Michael set his bag down in the entryway and looked around, his eyes taking the decorations, the tree, the familiar space of his childhood home. "It looks exactly the same," he said softly. "It looks perfect." Sarah closed the door behind them, shutting out the cold, and turned to look at her son, really look at him, making sure he was real, that this was not some cruel dream. He was standing in her living room, in his uniform, looking tired and happy and so very grown up, and she felt her heart swell with a love so fierce it almost hurt. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the couch. "Sit down. Let me get you something. Coffee? Food? What do you need?" "Mom," Michael said, catching her hand as she started to move toward the kitchen. "Mom, stop. Can we just sit for a minute? I have been traveling for 2 days straight. I just want to sit with you." Sarah nodded, swallowing hard, and they moved to the couch together, sitting side by side, Michael's hand still holding hers. The blanket her mother had made was still there, draped over the arm of the couch, and Sarah pulled it over both of them, creating a cocoon of warmth and comfort. They sat in silence for a moment, just breathing, just being together, Sarah could feel the solid weight of Michael beside her, could hear his breathing, slow and steady, could feel the warmth of his hand in hers. It was real. He was real. This was happening. I have missed you so much, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Every single day, Michael. Every single day, I have missed you. I have missed you too, Mom, Michael replied, squeezing her hand. More than I can say. It has been hard over there. Really hard. And all I could think about was home, was this house, was you. I needed to be here. I needed to see you. Sarah turned to look at him, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he was carrying. How long do you have? She asked, almost afraid of the answer. How long can you stay? 2 weeks, Michael said, and Sarah felt relief wash over her like a wave. 2 whole weeks. I have to be back on base by January 8th. But until then, I am all yours. 2 weeks. 14 days. It was not enough, would never be enough, but it was so much more than she had expected, so much more than the empty Christmas morning she had been facing just minutes ago. Continua a historia, we're going to have the best 2 weeks, Sarah said, her voice stronger now, filled with determination and joy. We're going to make every single moment count. Michael smiled and leaned his head back against the couch, his eyes closing briefly. That sounds perfect, Mom. That sounds absolutely perfect. They sat together as the morning light grew stronger, filling the room with a soft golden glow. The Christmas tree lights continued their gentle dance, but now they seemed celebratory rather than melancholy, marking not loneliness but reunion, not absence but presence. Sarah kept her hand in Michael's, afraid that if she let go, he might disappear, might prove to be nothing more than a beautiful dream. But he did not disappear. He stayed solid and real beside her, his breathing gradually slowing as exhaustion began to catch up with him. Sarah watched him, memorizing every detail, every line of his face, every change that time and distance had wrought. He was still her boy, her baby, but he was also a man now, someone who had seen and done things she could only imagine, someone who carried burdens she wished she could lift from his shoulders. Are you hungry? She asked again, unable to help herself, the mother in her needing to feed him, to care for him, to make everything better. I can make those cinnamon rolls you love, the ones with the cream cheese frosting, and eggs and bacon and... Mom, Michael interrupted gently, opening his eyes and turning to look at her. That sounds amazing, but maybe in a little bit? I am so tired I can barely think straight. Can I just stay here with you for a while? Of course, Sarah said immediately. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need. They settled back into the couch, and Sarah pulled the blanket more snugly around them. Outside, the neighborhood was coming fully to life now. She could hear the distant sounds of children laughing, doors opening and closing, the occasional car driving past. The world was celebrating Christmas, and now, finally, so was she. Tell me about it, she said softly. If you want to, tell me about where you have been, what you have been doing, or do not, if you would rather not. I just want to hear your voice. Michael was quiet for a moment, his eyes fixed on the Christmas tree, watching the lights blink on and off in their program pattern. It is complicated, he said finally. Some of it I cannot talk about, you know that. But it is beautiful there in some ways. The landscape, mountains and deserts and skies that go on forever. The people they're just people, Mom. Families and kids and old folks. Just try to live their lives. It makes you think about things differently. He paused, and Sarah waited, not pushing, just listening. I have made some good friends, Michael continued. Really good guys who have my back, and I have theirs. We look out for each other. That helps. That makes it bearable. But it is hard being away from everything familiar, everything that feels like home. You start to forget what normal life feels like. What it is like to just, I do not know, go to a grocery store or watch a movie or have a conversation that is not about missions or equipment or strategy. Sarah squeezed his hand, her heart aching for him. I cannot imagine, she said. I wish I could make it easier. You do, Michael said, turned to look at her, his eyes serious. You do make it easier, Mom. Your letters, your emails, The care packages you send. That stuff keeps me going. Knowing that you are here, that home is here, waiting for me. That is everything. Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes again. But these were different tears. Not born of loneliness, but of love, of gratitude, of the profound connection between mother and child that distance could not diminish. You are going to make me cry again, she said, trying to laugh. Sorry, Michael said, but he was smiling. I have had a lot of time to think about this stuff. A lot of time to realize what matters. They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who know each other deeply, who do not need to fill every moment with words. Sarah listened to Michael's breathing gradually even out, felt his body relax against hers, and realized he was falling asleep. She did not move, did not want to disturb him, content to sit there and hold him, to be his safe place, his home. The morning continued to unfold around them. The light through the windows grew brighter, warmer, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. The radiator hummed its steady song. The house settled and creaked, but now those sounds felt companionable rather than lonely. Sarah sat with her sleeping son, wrapped in her mother's blanket, and felt a peace she had not known in months. She thought about all the Christmas mornings that had come before, all the joy and chaos and love that had filled this house over the years. She thought about her mother, who had been so proud of Michael, so happy to see him home safe. She thought about David, who had loved Christmas almost as much as her son did, who had always made sure the day was special, magical, full of surprises. And here was the greatest surprise of all, she thought. Here was Michael, home when she thought he could not be, sleeping peacefully beside her, safe and whole in here. It was a gift beyond measure, a miracle wrapped not in paper and ribbon, but in uniform and exhaustion and love. Sarah did not know how long they sat there, time losing its meaning in the warm cocoon of the living room. It could have been minutes or hours. Eventually, Michael stirred, his eyes opening slowly. Confusion crossed his face for a moment before memory returned, and he smiled. Sorry, he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Did not mean to pass out on you. Do not apologize, Sarah said, brushing his hair back from his forehead in a gesture as old as his childhood. You needed the rest. How do you feel? Better, Michael said, sitting up and stretching, his joints popping audibly. Still tired, but better. And now I am definitely hungry. Are those cinnamon rolls still on offer? Sarah laughed and stood up, energy flooding through her, purpose and joy replacing the lethargy that had gripped her earlier. Absolutely, she said. You sit right there, and I will make you the best Christmas breakfast you have ever had. She hurried into the kitchen, her slippers shuffling against the floor, and began pulling out ingredients. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, cinnamon, cream cheese. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory taking over, the familiar ritual of baking soothing and centering her. She could hear Michael moving around in the living room, probably stretching out the kinks from his long journey, and the sound of him, the simple presence of him, made her want to sing. She mixed the dough, kneaded it on the flour counter, rolled it out into a perfect rectangle. The scent of cinnamon filled the kitchen as she sprinkled it generously over the butter-slick surface, and she found herself humming one of those old carols her mother used to sing. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. And it was bright, she thought, despite everything. Despite the losses and the loneliness and the fear, this moment was bright and beautiful and perfect. Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, leaning against a frame, watching her work. I have missed this, he said softly, watching you cook. The house smelling like this. Just normal stuff. Sarah looked up from rolling the dough into a log, her hands sticky with butter and sugar. This is not normal stuff, she said with a smile. This is Christmas stuff. Special stuff. It is all special when you've been away, Michael said. Trust me. Sarah cut the log into thick slices and arranged them in a buttered pan, then slid the pan into the preheated oven. 25 minutes, she announced. Just enough time for you to take a shower, if you want. Your bathroom is exactly as you left it. Clean towels in the closet. Michael nodded gratefully. That sounds amazing. I feel like I have been wearing this uniform for a week. He disappeared upstairs, and Sarah heard the water start running, the old pipes groaning slightly as they always did. She set about making coffee, the good stuff she saved for special occasions, and started frying bacon, the sizzle and pop filling the kitchen with another layer of delicious scent. She cracked eggs into a bowl, whisked them with milk and a pinch of salt, and poured them into a hot pan, scrambling them slowly, the way Michael liked them, soft and creamy. The timer dinged, and she pulled the cinnamon rolls from the oven, their tops golden brown and perfect. She mixed the cream cheese frosting while they cooled slightly, then spread it generously over each roll, watching it melt into the warm crevices. The kitchen looked like a magazine spread, she thought with satisfaction. Plates of bacon, fluffy scrambled eggs, a platter of frosted cinnamon rolls, fresh coffee steaming in 2 mugs. Michael came back downstairs just as she was setting everything on the table, his hair damp, wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt he must have left in his closet. He looked younger somehow, more like the boy she remembered, and Sarah felt her heart squeeze with love. "Mom," he said, staring at the table. This is incredible." "Sit," Sarah commanded, pulling out a chair for him. "Eat." "You are too thin." Michael laughed but obeyed, settling into his chair and immediately reaching for a cinnamon roll. He took a bite and closed his eyes, making a sound of pure contentment. "Oh my God," he said around the mouthful. "I have dreamed about these. Literally dreamed about them." Sarah sat across from him, her own plate forgotten, content to watch him eat, to see him enjoy the food she had made with so much love. He ate with the single-minded focus of someone who had been truly hungry, who had been living on military rations and cafeteria food for too long. He demolished 2 cinnamon rolls, a pile of eggs, and half the bacon before he finally slowed down, leaning back in his chair with a satisfied sigh. "I think I am going to survive," he announced. "I should hope so," Sarah said, sipping her coffee. "I have 2 weeks of meals planned for you." They cleaned up together, falling into an easy rhythm, Michael washing while Sarah dried, their shoulders bumping companionably in the small kitchen. It felt so normal, so right, that Sarah had to keep reminding herself it was real, that he was really here, that this was not some elaborate fantasy her lonely mind had conjured. When the kitchen was clean, they moved back to the living room, and Michael's eyes fell on the presents under the tree. "You have not opened anything yet," he observed. "I was waiting," Sarah said, though she had not known what she was waiting for until this moment. "I guess I was waiting for you." Michael grinned and dropped to the floor beside the tree, cross-legged like he used to sit when he was little. "Well, I am here now," he said. "Let us do this properly." He reached under the tree and pulled out the presents, examining the tags, sorting them into piles. "This one is for me," he said, holding up the package Sarah had wrapped weeks ago. "This one is for Aunt Linda. And this one," he picked up the small silver wrap box, "is for you, from you," which is both sad and practical. Sarah laughed, settling onto the couch. "I did not want the tree to look completely bare." "Well, it is not bare anymore," Michael said, "because I have something for you too." He stood and went to his duffel bag, still sitting in the entryway, and rummaged through it for a moment before pulling out a small wrap package. It was not professionally wrapped, the paper creased and the tape applied with more enthusiasm than skill, but it was the most beautiful thing Sarah had ever seen. "Michael," she breathed, "you did not have to." "Of course I did," Michael said, coming back and handing her the package. "It is Christmas, and you are my mom. Open it." Sarah took the package with trembling hands, feeling the weight of it, the care that had gone into choosing it, wrapping it, bringing it all the way across the world. She carefully peeled back the paper, not wanting to tear it, wanting to preserve every part of this moment. Inside was a wooden box, small and intricately carved, the wood dark and smooth and beautiful. Sarah ran her fingers over the carvings, feeling the patterns, the craftsmanship. "It is gorgeous," she whispered. "Open it," Michael urged. Sarah lifted the lid, and inside, nestled on a bed of soft fabric, was a delicate silver necklace. The pendant was a small compass, the details etched with incredible precision, the needle actually moving, actually working. Sarah lifted it out, the chain sliding through her fingers like water, and held up to the light. "It is a compass," Michael explained, his voice soft. "So you always know I am trying to find my way home to you. No matter where I am, no matter how far away, I am always trying to get back to you." Sarah could not speak, could not find words adequate to express what she was feeling. She clutched the necklace to her chest, tears streaming down her face, and Michael moved to sit beside her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "I love it," she finally managed to say. "I love it so much. And I love you, Michael. So very much." "I love you too, Mom," Michael said, his own voice thick with emotion. More than anything, they sat together, holding each other, the compass necklace pressed between them. And Sarah thought about journeys and homecomings, about distance and connection, about all the ways love persists even when separated by oceans and continents in time. Eventually, they pulled apart, wiping their eyes and laughing at themselves, and Michael insisted that Sarah open the other presents. The one from Linda turned out to be a beautiful scarf, soft and warm, in shades of blue and green. The one Sarah had bought for herself was a book she had been wanting to read, a novel about family and memory and the places we call home. And then it was Michael's turn. He opened his present carefully, revealing the new watch Sarah had bought him. Sturdy and practical, with a face that glowed in the dark and hands that would keep perfect time no matter where in the world he found himself. "It is perfect," Michael said, immediately strapping it onto his wrist. "Thank you, Mom." They spent the rest of the morning in comfortable companionship, talking and laughing, sharing stories, filling in the gaps that phone calls and emails could not bridge. Michael told her about his friends, about the funny moments that happened even in difficult circumstances, about the small joys they found to keep themselves sane. Sarah told him about the neighborhood, about the Hendersons' new baby, about the book club she had joined, about the volunteer work she had been doing at the library. The day unfolded with a gentle, unhurried pace. They watched an old Christmas movie, one they had watched together every year when Michael was growing up, quoting the lines they knew by heart, laughing at the same jokes they had laughed at 100 times before. They made sandwiches for lunch, nothing fancy, just turkey and cheese and lettuce, but they tasted better than any meal Sarah could remember. In the afternoon, they bundled up in coats and scarves and went for a walk around the neighborhood. The air was crisp and cold, their breath creating clouds that dissipated quickly in the breeze. Christmas decorations adorned every house, lights and wreaths and inflatable snowmen, each one a testament to hope and celebration and tradition. They walked slowly, Michael's hand tucked into the crook of Sarah's elbow, and she felt proud to be seen with him, this strong, brave young man who was her son. They ran into the Hendersons, who were outside with their children, and Michael spent several minutes talking with them, answering their questions about his service with patience and grace, accepting their thanks with humility. Sarah watched him, seeing how he had grown, how he had learned to carry himself in the world, and she felt a fierce pride mixed with a bittersweet ache. When they returned home, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple. They stood on the front porch for a moment, watching the display. Neither of them wanted to speak and break the spell. Inside, Sarah made hot chocolate, the real kind, with melted chocolate and warm milk and a dollop of whipped cream on top. They sat by the Christmas tree, the lights now visible in the gathering darkness, and sipped their drinks in comfortable silence. "This has been the best Christmas," Sarah said finally. "The very best." "It has," Michael agreed. "I am so glad I could be here. I am so glad I could surprise you." "You definitely succeeded in that," Sarah said with a laugh. "I think my heart stopped for a moment when I saw you." "Sorry about that," Michael said, grinning, "but it was worth it to see your face." They talked late into the evening, neither of them wanting the day to end, wanting to stretch it out as long as possible. Sarah made a simple dinner, pasta with marinara sauce and a salad, and they ate at the kitchen table, the conversation flowing easily, naturally, the way it always had between them. When the dishes were done and the kitchen cleaned, they returned to the living room one more time. Michael stretched out on the couch, his head in Sarah's lap, and she ran her fingers through his hair, the gesture automatic, comforting to both of them. "Tell me about your plans," Sarah said softly, "for the next 2 weeks. What do you want to do?" "This," Michael said immediately. "Exactly this. I do not need to go anywhere or do anything special. I just want to be here with you in this house. I want to sleep in my own bed and eat your cooking and watch stupid movies and talk about nothing important. I want normal, Mom. I want home." Sarah's fingers continued their gentle movement through his hair. "Then that is exactly what we will do," she said. "We will have the most wonderfully normal 2 weeks imaginable." "Perfect," Michael murmured, his eyes drifting closed. "That sounds absolutely perfect." They stayed like that until Michael fell asleep, his breathing deep and even, his face relaxed and peaceful. Sarah continued to stroke his hair, watching him, memorizing this moment, storing away in her heart to sustain her through the months ahead when he would be gone again. Eventually, she gently woke him and sent him upstairs to his room, to his own bed, and he went without protest, exhausted from travel and emotion and the simple comfort of being home. Sarah heard him moving around upstairs, heard the creak of his bed as he settled into it, and then silence. She stood alone in the living room, the Christmas tree lights still twinkling, and looked around at the space that had felt so empty that morning. It was full now, full of love and presence and hope. Michael was home. Her son was home. And for 2 precious weeks, they would have each other, would have this time together, would create new memories to carry them through the separations ahead. Sarah walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street, at the houses with their glowing windows, at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. She touched the compass necklace at her throat, feeling its weight, its promise. "Thank you," she whispered, though she was not sure who she was thanking. God, the universe, fate, luck, all the above. Thank you for bringing him home. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for this perfect, impossible, wonderful Christmas. She turned off the tree lights and made her way upstairs, pausing outside Michael's door to listen to his steady breathing. He was safe. He was here. He was home. And that, Sarah thought as she climbed into her own bed, was all that mattered. That was everything. Continua Historia the next morning, Sarah woke to the smell of coffee brewing, and for a moment she was disoriented, confused, because she always made the coffee. She was always the first one up. Then memory flooded back, warm and wonderful, and she smiled, pulling on her robe and hurrying downstairs. Michael was in the kitchen, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in all directions, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He looked up when she entered and grinned. "Morning, Mom," he said. "I figured it was my turn to make breakfast." "You did not have to do that," Sarah protested, but she was touched, deeply touched, by the gesture. "I want to," Michael said firmly. "You have been taking care of me my whole life. Let me take care of you for a change." So Sarah sat at the kitchen table and let her son make her breakfast. He was not as skilled in the kitchen as she was, and the eggs were a little overdone and the toast a little too dark. But it was the most delicious meal she had ever eaten, because it was made with love, because her son was here in her kitchen, doing this simple, ordinary, extraordinary thing. They spent the day in easy companionship, doing nothing and everything. Michael helped her take down some of the Christmas decorations, the ones that were starting to look a little tired, and they reorganized the living room, moving furniture around just for fun of it, just to see how it would look. They played cards, old games they used to play when Michael was young, and Sarah won most of them, crowing with victory while Michael laughed and accused her of cheating. In the afternoon, they drove to the grocery store together, and Sarah let Michael push the cart while she selected ingredients for the meals she planned to make over the next 2 weeks. She was going to cook all his favorites. She had decided: pot roast and mashed potatoes, chicken parmesan, her famous chili, chocolate chip cookies, apple pie. She was going to fill him up with love and comfort and home, so that when he had to leave again, he would carry it with him. They ran into several people Sarah knew, neighbors and friends, and each time she introduced Michael with barely concealed pride. "This is my son," she would say. "He is home on leave." And people would shake his hand and thank him for his service. And Michael would smile politely and deflect the attention, uncomfortable with the praise but gracious nonetheless. That evening, they made dinner together, working side by side in the kitchen, and Sarah taught Michael how to make her pot roast, the one with the secret ingredient that made it so tender and flavorful. He listened carefully, asking questions, taking mental notes, and Sarah realized he was trying to learn, try to take these recipes with him, try to create a connection, a home that he could access even when he was far away. The pot roast took hours to cook, filling the house with the most incredible aroma, rich and savory and comforting. While they waited, They sat in the living room, and Michael told her more stories about the places he had been, the things he had seen. He talked about the children in the villages, how they would run up to the soldiers, curious and fearless, asking for candy or just wanting to practice their English. He talked about the landscape, the way the sun would set over the mountains, painting everything in shades of gold and red that seemed almost unreal. He also talked about the hard parts, though more carefully, more guardedly, the fear that was always present, lurking in the background, the exhaustion that went bone deep, the friends he had lost, though he did not go into detail. And Sarah did not push. She just listened, holding his hand, being present, being a safe place to unload the burdens he carried. When the pot roast was ready, they ate at the dining room table, the good table that Sarah usually only used for holidays and special occasions. But this was a special occasion, she thought. Every moment with Michael was a special occasion. They ate slowly, savoring the food and the conversation, and Sarah felt a contentment she had not known in years. The days began to blur together in the best possible way, each one full of small moments and simple pleasures. They established a routine of sorts. Michael would wake early, his military training making it impossible for him to sleep late, and he would make coffee and sit in the quiet house, reading or just thinking. Sarah would join him when she woke, and they would have breakfast together, planning their day. Some days they stayed home, watching movies or reading or working on small projects around the house. Michael fixed a leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom that Sarah had been meaning to call a plumber about. He cleaned out the gutters and replaced a few loose shingles on the roof. He organized the garage, a task that had been overwhelming Sarah for months, sorting through boxes and deciding what to keep and what to donate. Other days they went out, exploring the town like tourists, visiting places they had not been to in years. They went to the old diner where Sarah used to take Michael after his soccer games, and they ordered the same meals they always used to order, burgers and fries and milkshakes. They went to the park where Michael had learned to ride his bike, and they walked the paths, remembering, laughing at old stories. One afternoon, they drove out to the cemetery where David and Sarah's mother were buried. It was cold, the ground hard with frost, but the sun was shining and the sky was a brilliant blue. They stood together at the graves, and Sarah told them about Michael being home, about the surprise, about how happy she was. Michael was quiet, his hand resting on his father's headstone, and Sarah gave him space, understanding that he needed this moment, this connection. "I miss him," Michael said finally, his voice rough. "I miss them both. I wish they could be here." "They are here," Sarah said softly, touching her heart. "They are always here. And they are so proud of you, Michael. So incredibly proud." Michael nodded, wiping at his eyes, and they stood there a while longer before heading back to the car. Both of them quiet, both of them feeling the weight of absence and the comfort of memory. The days passed too quickly, each one precious, each one slipping away despite Sarah's best efforts to hold on to them. They celebrated New Year's Eve together, just the two of them, watching the ball drop on television and toasting with sparkling cider. They stayed up late, talking about hopes and dreams and plans for the future, and when midnight came, they hugged each other tight, holding on, not wanting to let go. Michael talked about what he wanted to do when his service was over, when he finally came home for good. He wanted to go back to school, maybe study engineering or architecture. He wanted to travel, but for pleasure this time, not for duty. He wanted to find someone to share his life with, to build a family of his own. He wanted, more than anything, to feel settled, to feel at peace. Sarah listened and encouraged and tried not to think about how far away those dreams seemed, how much time and distance still separated Michael from the life he envisioned. She focused instead on the present, on the fact that he was here now, that they had this time together. They made more meals together, and Sarah continued to teach him her recipes. They baked cookies and bread, and a chocolate cake that turned out lopsided but delicious. They watched the snow fall one afternoon, big fat flakes that covered everything in white, and they bundled up and went outside to build a snowman, laughing like children, their fingers numb with cold but their hearts warm. Sarah took 100 pictures, maybe more, capturing every moment she could. Michael at the kitchen table, drinking his morning coffee. Michael on the couch, reading a book. Michael in the backyard, throwing snowballs. Michael smiling, Michael laughing, Michael just being. She knew she would treasure these photos, would look at them over and over in the months ahead, would use them to remind herself that this had been real, that he had been here. They talked about everything and nothing, politics and philosophy, and the meaning of life, favorite movies and books and songs, childhood memories and embarrassing moments and inside jokes that no one else would understand. They talked until their voices were hoarse, until there was nothing left to say, and then they sat in comfortable silence, just being together. One evening, about a week into his visit, Michael asked Sarah about her life, really asked, wanted to know how she was doing, what she was feeling, how she was coping with being alone. Sarah tried to deflect, to insist she was fine, but Michael persisted, gently but firmly, and eventually she opened up. She told him about the loneliness, about how the house felt too big and too quiet. She told him about the grief that still caught her by surprise sometimes, hit her out of nowhere, making her cry in the middle of the grocery store or while watching television. She told him about the fears she carried for him, the constant worry that something would happen, that she would get a knock on the door and a visit from uniformed officers bearing terrible news. Michael listened without interrupting, his face serious, his eyes full of compassion. When she finished, he took her hands in his and looked at her directly. "Mom," he said, "I cannot promise you that nothing will happen to me. I wish I could, but I cannot. What I can promise is that I am careful, that I am smart, that I have good people watching my back. And I can promise that I will do everything in my power to come home to you, every single time." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know," she whispered. "I know you will. I wish I could protect you. I wish I could keep you safe." "You do keep me safe," Michael said. "You keep me safe by being here, by being my home, by giving me something to fight for, something to come back to. You keep me safe by loving me. That is more powerful than you know." They held each other, mother and son, and Sarah felt some of the fear ease, not disappear but become more manageable, more bearable. She could not control what happened to Michael when he was away, but she could control how she loved him, how she supported him, how she kept the home fires burning for his return. The second week passed even faster than the first, the days accelerating as they approached the inevitable goodbye. Sarah tried not to think about it, tried to stay present, but was always there, lurking in the background, a shadow over the joy. They made the most of every moment. They watched the sunrise one morning, getting up before dawn and sitting on the front porch with blankets and hot coffee, watching the sky transform from black to gray to pink to gold. They cooked a huge dinner one night and invited the Hendersons over, filling the house with laughter and conversation and life. They sorted through old photo albums, reminiscing about the past, laughing at terrible haircuts and questionable fashion choices. Michael helped Sarah set up a new computer she had bought, but had been too intimidated to unpack. He showed her how to use video chat software, how to send photos, how to navigate social media. He wanted to make sure they could stay connected, that the distance between them would feel a little less vast. On Michael's last full day, they did not do anything special. They just stayed home, moving to the house together, savoring the ordinary moments. Sarah made his favorite breakfast, pancakes with blueberries and maple syrup. They watched old home videos, laughing at young Michael's antics, at David's terrible dad jokes, at Sarah's patient exasperation. They played music and danced in the living room, silly and unself-conscious, just enjoying each other. That evening, Sarah made a special dinner, all of Michael's favorites, a feast that covered the entire table. They ate slowly, talking and laughing, neither of them wanting the meal to end. When they finally finished, they cleaned up together one last time, and then they sat in the living room, the Christmas tree lights still twinkling, though it was now well into January. "I do not want you to go," Sarah said, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I know you have to. I know you have a duty, but I do not want you to go." "I do not want to go either," Michael said, his voice thick. "I want to stay here forever. But I cannot. Not yet. But someday, Mom. Someday I will come home for good, and we will have all the time in the world. Promise me," Sarah said, gripping his hand. "Promise me you will be careful. Promise me you will come home." "I promise," Michael said, looking into her eyes. "I promise I will do everything I can to come home to you. I promise." They stayed up late. Neither of them wanted to sleep, wanted to stretch out these last hours as long as possible. They talked about the visit, about their favorite moments, about how much it had meant to both of them. They made plans for the future, for Michael's next leave, for all the things they would do when he came home again. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, they went to bed, both of them exhausted but reluctant to let the day end. Sarah lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds of Michael moving around in his room, and she felt her heart breaking and healing at the same time. The next morning came too soon. Sarah woke to find Michael already up, already dressed in his uniform, his duffel bag packed and waiting by the door. He had made coffee, and they sat at the kitchen table one last time, drinking it slowly, not talking much, just being together. When it was time to go, they stood in the entryway, facing each other, and Sarah felt like she was being torn in two. She wanted to be strong for him, wanted to send him off with a smile and encouragement, but she also wanted to beg him to stay, to refuse to let him go. Michael hugged her tight, and Sarah buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of him, the solid reality of him. "I love you, Mom," Michael whispered. "Thank you for the best 2 weeks of my life. Thank you for being you. I love you too," Sarah managed to say. "So much, more than words can say. Come home to me, Michael. Come home safe." "I will," Michael promised. "I will." He pulled back, and Sarah saw that his eyes were wet, that he was struggling as much as she was. He picked up his duffel bag, and Sarah walked him to the door, out onto the porch, down the steps to where a taxi was waiting to take him to the airport. Michael threw his bag in the trunk and turned back to Sarah one more time. He touched the compass necklace at her throat, the one he had given her on Christmas morning. "Remember," he said, "I am always finding my way home to you." Sarah nodded, unable to speak, and Michael kissed her forehead, then climbed into the taxi. Sarah stood on the sidewalk, watching as the car pulled away, watching until it turned the corner and disappeared from sight. She stood there for a long time, the cold seeping through her robe, her hand clutching the compass at her throat. The street was quiet, the morning still early, and Sarah felt the loneliness creeping back in, the silence returning. But it was different this time. The house would be empty again, yes, but it was not hollow. It was full of memories, full of love, full of the 2 weeks she and Michael had shared. She had been given a gift, an unexpected, precious gift, and she would hold on to it, would let it sustain her through the months ahead. Sarah turned and walked back into the house, closing the door behind her. The Christmas tree was still up, the lights still twinkling, and she decided to leave it for a few more days, to hold on to the magic a little longer. She made herself another cup of coffee and sat on the couch, wrapped in her mother's blanket, and looked around at the space that had been transformed by Michael's presence. She could still feel him here, could still sense his energy, his love, his promise to return. The compass necklace rested against her heart, a constant reminder, a symbol of hope and connection, and the unbreakable bond between mother and son. No matter how far apart they were, no matter how much distance separated them, they were always connected, always finding their way back to each other. Sarah closed her eyes and let herself remember. Michael walking up the sidewalk on Christmas morning, his smile, his arms around her, the meals they had shared, the conversations, the laughter, the quiet moments, the ordinary moments, the moments that had been anything but ordinary because they had been together. She would carry these memories with her, would hold them close, would let them light her way through the dark times. And she would wait, with patience and hope and love, for the day when Michael would walk up that sidewalk again, when he would come home for good, when they would have all the time in the world. The house settled around her, those familiar creaks and groans, and Sarah opened her eyes and looked at the Christmas tree, at the lights dancing and swaying. She thought about miracles and surprises, and the power of love to bridge any distance. It had been the best Christmas of her life, she thought, the most unexpected, the most precious, the most perfect. Michael had given her a gift beyond measure, not just his presence, but his love, his time, his heart. And she had given him the same, had given him home, had given him a place to rest and heal and remember who he was beneath the uniform and the duty. Sarah stood up, setting her coffee mug aside, and walked to window. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and she watched it, feeling the warmth of the light even through the glass. It was a new day, a new beginning, and she would face it with courage and hope and the knowledge that she was loved, that she had loved. That love was the thing that mattered most. She touched the compass at her throat one more time, feeling its weight, its promise, and she smiled. Michael was out there somewhere, on his way back to his duty, but he was also here in her heart, in her memories, in every corner of this house that it filled with his presence. And he would come home again. She believed that with every fiber of her being, he would come home, and she would be here, waiting, keeping the light on, keeping the home fires burning, being his North Star, his compass, his way home. The Christmas season was over, but the magic remained, woven into the fabric of her life. A reminder that miracles do happen, that prayers are answered, that love endures all things. Sarah turned away from the window and began her day, moving through the house with purpose and peace. She would take down the decorations soon, would pack away the ornaments and the lights, would return the house to its normal state. But she would keep the memories, would treasure them, would let them sustain her. And she would count the days until Michael came home again, until she could hold him, until she could see his smile and hear his laugh and feel his presence filling the empty spaces. She would count the days and fill them with life and purpose and hope, because that was what love did. It endured. It persisted. It found a way, always, to bridge the distance, to overcome the obstacles, to bring people home to each other. Sarah looked around her living room one more time, at the tree, at the couch where she and Michael had sat together, at the space that held so much love and memory and meaning. She felt grateful, deeply grateful, for the surprise reunion, for the 2 weeks they had shared, for the gift of her son's presence on that Christmas morning when she had thought she would be alone. It had been a shock. Yes, a heartfelt shock that had stopped her heart and started again, that had transformed her loneliness into joy, her emptiness into fullness. It had been a miracle wrapped in uniform and exhaustion and love, and she would never forget it, would carry it with her always. The compass at her throat caught the morning light, glinting softly, and Sarah smiled. Michael was finding his way, and so was she. They were both navigating their paths, their journeys, but they were always connected, always moving toward each other, always home in each other's hearts. And that, Sarah thought, was the greatest gift of all, not the presents under the tree or the decorations on the walls, but the love that bound them together, the connection that distance could not break, the promise that no matter what, they would always find their way home to each other. She took a deep breath, feeling the peace settle over her like a warm blanket, and she began her day, carrying Michael with her in every step, in every breath, in every beat of her heart. The surprise reunion at Christmas morning had been a gift beyond measure, a moment of pure magic and joy and love. And though Michael was gone again, though the house was quiet once more, Sarah was not alone. She was surrounded by love, by memory, by hope, by the unshakable knowledge that her son would come home again, that they would have more mornings together, more meals, more conversations, more moments of connection and joy. And until that day came, she would live her life with courage and grace, honoring the gift she had been given, holding on to the love that sustained her, being the home that Michael needed, the light that guided him, the compass that always pointed him in the right direction. Home, love, family, these were the things that mattered, the things that endured, the things that made life worth living. And Sarah had them all, woven into the fabric of her being, carried in her heart, expressed in every action and every thought. The Christmas tree lights continued their gentle dance, and Sarah stood in her living room, bathed in their glow, feeling blessed and grateful and full of hope. The surprise reunion had changed everything, had reminded her of what was possible, of the power of love to create miracles, of the importance of holding on to hope even in the darkest times. Michael was out there, somewhere in the world, carrying her love with him, finding his way, doing his duty. And she was here in this house, in this moment, carrying his love with her, keeping the home fires burning, being his anchor and his compass and his reason to keep fighting, to keep going, to keep finding his way home. And someday, not today, but someday, he would walk up that sidewalk again, would climb those porch steps, would open that door and he would be home for good. And Sarah would be there, waiting, ready to wrap her arms around him and never let go. Until then, she would live each day with purpose and love, honoring the gift of surprise reunion, holding on to the memories, believing in the promise of tomorrow, because that was what love did. It believed, it hoped, it endured, it found a way. Always, it found a way home.